Thank you for tuning in. Joining us today is the leader of California's NORML, Gieringer, and he has quite a fight on his hands dealing with a variety of changes that are occurring in his state. And with it being one of the largest states in the United States, I think maybe it is the largest, Texas might be in there, he has the need to find more members and the need to get a message out to the rest of America. Thank you for joining us today. Now, the politics that California NORML focuses on focuses a lot when it comes to, at least the hemp movement, on the medical aspects. Isn't that correct?
Well, we have, with the recent victory in San Francisco with Proposition P, has put that to the forefront. The question is, what public figures do we have out there who are willing to pick up the ball when 80% of the people of San Francisco say it's time for a change on the issue? Really, it's amazing how our politicians have been pussyfooting about it, but I was very happy to see that the city officials of San Francisco, including the leading candidates for mayor, Mayor Art Agnos and former police chief Frank Jordan, and other city officials have expressed nothing but support for Proposition P. And not only that, we found that by putting Proposition P out there, we were able to give them an issue that they felt good about supporting, that they didn't have to run and hide from. Now, I think it's time to bring that out to some of the other leaders in California, particularly in the legislature and in Congress, and get the ball rolling.
Now, you've come out to the nation's capital shortly after, what, it was only like 3 or 4 days since Prop P passed. It hasn't been very long.
It's been a week, yeah.
Maybe a week. So you've arrived here just as quickly as the message that proposal being passed sent to our nation's capital. How do you think Congress and the Senate is starting to react to this? Do you think it's going to take the attention of national candidates and it will become
well, it
more
remains
of a
to be,
stage?
it's up to us. We're going to actually have to go to Capitol Hill, where I was the other day, and I'm going again on Monday, and I think other people have to be doing that too, talking to their Congress people and urging them to take a position on this issue. In fact, one of the key leaders in all of Congress and among the Democrats on the issue of medical marijuana is an important legislator from California, Henry Waxman from Los Angeles, who has, I must say, had a very good record in voting against repressive drug legislation. He's been in a minority, a very small minority of people who have opposed, who've actually voted no on these crime bills that come down, like the latest omnibus crime bill. And he is also the head of the Health and Environment Subcommittee that deals with how drugs get regulated, FDA drugs, and Health and Human Services, which is making the decision on medical marijuana. I think it behooves us to tell Mr. Waxman, I hope his constituents will tell him, that they would appreciate it if he started holding hearings on the issue of medical marijuana, because I think by doing so, he would have the opportunity to really score some important points that have to be scored and affect some change very quickly, because there will be popular support for this, and there's no reason that he shouldn't undertake it. So we hope that people will talk to Waxman and others urging this kind of thing.
Okay, now, you and I being together from California, I'm not native there, I'm native from Indiana, but I spent the last 4 or 5 years living in the state, know that smoke a joint, lose your license seems to have some importance to that state, and we got to deal with that.
That's right, it's on the agenda. California has got to act on smoke a joint, lose your license by October 1993, or we start losing federal highway funds.
What can they do? What can they do?
Well, we've got 2 options. We either enact smoke a joint, lose your license, which is an automatic 6-month driving license suspension for any drug offense, including personal possession of marijuana, regardless of whether it's on the road or not. Or we can reject it by a joint resolution of the legislature and the governor.
Okay.
Now, the legislature does not care for smoke a joint, lose your license, as does the majority of California public. An all-informed opinion in California, the Sacramento Bee, the San Jose Mercury, have editorialized against this. There's nobody I've heard yet who's spoken up in favor of it, other than, I believe, the Orange County Board of Supervisors.
So then why is it still in existence?
But we have, because the legislature has to get agreement from the governor on what to do. Now, we have a governor who announced that he was in favor of recriminalizing marijuana. And so the universal assumption has been, well, gee, Pete Wilson is going to veto any attempt to pass an override resolution to smoke a joint, lose your license. We think that Pete Wilson's position is very ill-informed. He really hasn't thought through the costs of this proposal, because you're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of marijuana offenders who now, get a ticket for smoking a joint in the park are going to be fighting driver's license suspension. I mean, they're going to get lawyers, they're going to get trials, public defenders. I mean, this is going to cost the state tens of millions of dollars. And it is so stupid. Everyone realizes it is so stupid to give 6 months driver's license suspension for somebody who has a joint in their purse in the airport, and yet you can drive drunk and get only a 4-month driver's license suspension in California. I mean, which is worse, really?
Yeah, but if they enact the tax situation that they've got on the marijuana.
The tax issue is a separate issue, whether they should also put a penalty tax on. That's been beaten back, and I don't expect it to come back. We did have to fight it. Senator Davis had a proposal in which he's had in for many years to put a controlled substances tax on. So if they catch you with drugs of any kind, they could say, all right, well, you didn't pay the tax. And the tax was going to be $500 per ounce. $500 per ounce of crack, $500 per ounce of LSD, $500 per ounce of marijuana. But they weren't, $500 was not really what you'd pay, because that was the tax only if you paid it in advance. If they caught you not having paid it, which is what they fully expected, then there would be a penalty, and it would be $5,000 an ounce, you see. And Ed Davis admitted himself this is just another way of expanding the state's forfeiture powers, all right, so that if there's a lot of, we can get the guys money. And this passed the Senate unanimously in California. A lot of senators voted for it knowing it was a bad bill, but thinking that the Assembly would knock it down, which it has in previous years. Unfortunately, it got loose in the Assembly. It didn't go through the same legislative channels it did last year, and it almost passed. But we were able to alert the important decision makers about that, and it got scotched at the last minute, and I don't think it's going to make it. Good. But this shows the importance of watching your public policy makers, your decision makers, your city council. These proposals come up, and if you aren't aware of them, I mean, they can sail right through, but when you say something, you can have an impact.
Okay. That's it, too. You say we have an impact. Okay, I'm calling you from Los Angeles, and I want to know, what can I do to stop this? What can I do as an individual?
Well, from Los Angeles, first of all, if you haven't done so already, please write to your state senator and your state assemblyman. Okay. Look them up in the phone book or from your Board of Elections if you don't know who they are, and write to them saying to vote against smoke a joint, lose your license, and to support an override.
And then what else?
And also write a letter to Pete Wilson, which was going to be ignored and probably put in a big pile of letters and weighed or something like that. But do it anyhow.
That's right, because if they get lots of tons of mail, I mean, nothing else, it does make a statement.
Well, let me say, state legislators don't get all that mail on a lot of issues. I mean, AB 101, the gay rights issue, got a lot of mail, but often they'll only have, 4 or 5 letters on a particular bill.
What else can we do that'll make a difference?
All right. The other thing you can do is go out and when you meet candidates, like at candidates' nights, or when your local congressman comes in town and has a public meeting, ask him his stand on that law, on smoke a joint, lose your license. Ask him his stand on medical marijuana. You might even ask whether people have a right, Americans have a right to smoke marijuana in the privacy of their personal lives.
Okay.
I wouldn't ask them to take a position on legalization. No politician is going to say yes to that at this particular moment, so let's not waste our breath. But let's focus on what's at hand. It's medical marijuana, it's smoke a joint, lose your license.
And we'll talk about more of that when we come back right after this. With us today is the head of California NORML, Del Gieringer. Del, we have some elections coming up in 1992. We always have elections coming up, but the candidates in 92 are the ones that we're focusing on primarily. Now, as a voter who's concerned about getting the propositions that we need taken care of and into office and implemented, I want to be able to find out how my candidate votes. I want to be able to find out his background. I want to be able to find out how I can make a difference when I get ready to cast my ballot.
Well, join California NORML, and California NORML Reports makes a point of giving you the information about how people are voting. And we've been following people. The very interesting votes have been occurring in California, and people are not very aware of them. I think the smoke a joint, lose your license vote was a particularly interesting one. This was a vote that was taken by Congress to force the states to change their laws. It was specifically aimed at marijuana decriminalization by Bill Bennett and Senator Alphonse D'Amato and Representative Jerry Solomon, well-known right-wing reactionaries from back there. Who voted for it in California? Well, all the Republicans did, with the exception of Tom Campbell, who's running for Senate. A lot of the Democrats did too, though, including some supposedly very liberal ones, a notable one being Barbara Boxer, who is running for Senate also, the same Senate seat, from San Francisco. And Barbara Boxer fancies herself to be an advocate of civil rights and personal freedom and abortion's rights and our right to control our own body. And she makes a very vociferous show of being pro-choice. But when you ask her about marijuana, she says, well, you know, I don't think it should be legal, and I don't think people should go to jail, but it shouldn't be legal to use it. And she defends her vote on smoke a joint, lose your license. And on no particularly good rational grounds. She's basically a prohibitionist. She doesn't like drugs at all. She said she'd like alcohol to be illegal if, you know, if that would help things out.
Well, it sounds more to me like she's trying to stop personal rights.
Right. Well, we tried. So we told. I mean, the obvious contradiction here is here's somebody who says she's pro-choice. She's pro-abortion. She's not pro-choice. And we confronted her with that at a couple of fundraisers for her, where we approached her, and the people in her campaign are people who are friends of ours.
Okay.
They agree with us on these issues. They don't know that Barbara Boxer had this position until we went up in the Democratic Convention in Oakland and talked to them, to fundraisers, and talked to them and said, do you know how Barbara Boxer is on marijuana? In fact, an incident that happened just a couple months ago, before the recent tragic death of Bill Graham. Bill Graham had a fundraiser for Barbara Boxer up at his beautiful Marin home, which is a psychedelic museum of, I'm just thrilled that I was able to see, and I'm glad I met Bill Graham too before he passed away. But I went up there along with Ed Rosenthal and Eric Harlow. We paid $100 to get in. We got a nice party there too, and we went around and circulated and talked about things. I went up to Barbara Boxer, introduced myself, tried to make overtures, and she said, well, she didn't agree with us on the marijuana issue,
so
blah, blah, blah.
Her with it.
And so we went over and talked to Bill Graham. And Ed Rosenthal buttonholed him, and we told Bill Graham the story, and Bill Graham said, what? Barbara Boxer doesn't understand weed? Why, that's an important issue. I'll have to tell her about it. And sure enough, the afternoon went on. Barbara Boxer gave a speech in which he went on about civil liberties and everything else, said wonderful things. I had to agree with everything she said in her speech. She never mentioned drugs. Went on to a fundraiser auction. First prize in the auction, 4 tickets to the New Year's Eve Grateful Dead concert. And Barbara Boxer's holding up these tickets saying, hey now, come on, this is the hottest tickets in town. Everybody's got to go to the Grateful Dead concert.
So she seems to have 2 different codes is what you're getting at.
Yes. Well, anyhow, so after all of this happened, Bill Graham finally came up to say what he had to say. And it was very simple. He said, well, look, I really agree with 99% of Barbara Boxer's positions, but I have to say there's one thing I disagree with her on. You know, I don't want to talk about drugs, but it's been 500 years since we came to this continent, and people still aren't free to plant the seed.
That's right. So now, do we have some kind of lobby going in California?
Do we have a,
is NORML involved with the lobby?
I try to do that, and I have friends and And there's a network of people who work on particular representatives. It's all volunteer, but we have phone trees, which need to be developed, especially, I would say, in Southern California, so that we can get phone calls through to a legislator's office if a key vote is going on and saying, hey, we care about this vote, because that's an important thing to do. If smoke a joint, lose your license comes to a vote, we want people phoning the Senate Judiciary Committee on the day of that vote, and to let people know when that comes. But
yeah, because oftentimes the people that are making these statements and making these policies have a multi-million-dollar budget to work with for their campaigns and are able to have, press releases put together for them and so on. And the people who are opposing these particular viewpoints are coming from their heart. They're working class heroes and are working on a budget. So we need to find some way to work together. What do you suggest when it comes to that state of the size of California? How would you pull us together?
That's a real tall order, and we're a long way from having a single organization. As you're aware, there's a network of groups in California that I think we're just going to have to keep developing for a while. I see, many different people working in many different places. That's on really, it's a county-by-county basis, and different counties have their expertise, and I try to handle Sacramento affairs and, press relations and stuff like that and keep people informed through the newsletter. As for, more developed organization, time will bring that, or it won't. We may not even need it. But it is important for us to get actively involved.
Now, how is it that NORML makes its policies when it comes to supporting various groups and various proposals and amendments going through the state? How is it that you make your selections? There's an awful lot going on out there.
There's not that many issues that are strictly marijuana. There's usually about 2 or 3 bills a year in the legislature that really deal with marijuana. Usually it's status quo. Okay. All right, and basically we get in there to try to oppose bad stuff. And every year there's a bad bill. A couple years ago, for instance, there was a bill when Van de Kamp was still Attorney General. They wanted to establish 10 plants as the absolute limit for personal use cultivation. So anybody who was caught with more than 10 plants is an automatic felon, not eligible for diversion, regardless of whether they're a medical patient or whatever. And everybody who knows anything about cultivation knows that's completely unrealistic and not what personal use is. And basically, we're the only people who know about personal use. The legislature doesn't, and neither does law enforcement. And so by going to the legislature and just talking to the people who are sponsoring this bill and explaining, well, look, this has nothing to do with personal use. You're going to get into all sorts of lawsuits on this sort of thing. This is unreasonable. Debunking the statistics. They had a cop come in and try to say that 1 plant grows 1 kilogram of marijuana. Well, yes, 1 plant on a government marijuana farm with no helicopters above it may grow 1 kilogram of marijuana, but we know that's not the way marijuana is grown. We said that, we convinced the committee. It wasn't hard to do because we did have the facts on this. So bills like that, don't come around that often.
Okay. But now, when it comes to focusing your energies too, you have to be very select in the type of people that you send as front people, and at the same time you're also focusing on groups and the muscle behind that. Who does most of the structuring throughout the state? I know you head it up. How is it organized? Is it done by large cities? Is there a lot of people like in LA?
It's a network. It's a network of people that we phone. Okay. Not all of whom are official members of California NORML, which has a very indefinite structure. Indefinite structure is not right. We do have bylaws, but we're probably going to have some reorganization of our own, just as National NORML is. But
we've got about a minute left.
Yes.
And if you had the opportunity to say one thing that was most important to the California citizens, as well as those people across America who are seeing this, what would be your statement?
Well, I think you have to really demand of your Congress people and your elected officials to stand up for your right as an American citizen to smoke marijuana. It's real simple. And we've got to state it in those terms and raise the issue whenever you encounter them, whenever you confront them. Ask them to state their stand.
We've been trying to get you on the show for a long time, and it's been a pleasure. I'd like to have you back again just as soon as we can work it out. And it's been a pleasure to have you tune in. If you have a chance to make a difference in your community, do it. Go out and find some change that you can contribute to and make somebody's life just a little bit happier. Until we get together again, keep happy, keep strong, keep wise.